The story begins with a plane struggling through a terrifying storm. Our main character, whose name was Chuck, was sitting peacefully using the toilet when suddenly the pressure in the plane began to drop, causing the toilet door to fly open, and a fire broke out in the cargo hold, leading to a dangerous explosion. The pilot made Chuck sit in his seat because an emergency landing had to be made in the ocean. The pilot handed him a life raft and told him to fasten his seatbelt. The plane began falling rapidly downward. Now the plane was approximately 3,000 meters away from the ocean. Just then, Chuck realized that the pocket watch given to him by his girlfriend had fallen. The pilot told him to put on his life jacket, but it was on the right side. Because of the pocket watch, Chuck unfastened his seatbelt and staggered off to pick it up. But just as he picked up the watch and tried to reach for the jacket, the angle of the plane shifted and he could not move at all. The pilot noticed that he was not in his seat, so he unfastened his own safety belt. The violent jolts badly injured the pilot. The pilot brought the plane down slowly onto the surface of the ocean. But due to the rough landing, water began filling the cabin. Because his safety belt was not fastened, Chuck's life was saved. Just then, suddenly the upper part of the plane burst open and ocean water began pouring inside the plane. But luckily, Chuck had an inflatable raft in his hands. However, just as he opened it, the part connected to the raft got stuck inside the plane. The sinking airplane began pulling Chuck downward along with the raft. But Chuck was fortunate because the rope attached to the raft suddenly snapped, and in this way, the life raft pulled him out of the jaws of death. Finally, Chuck safely reached the surface of the ocean. He used all his strength trying to climb onto the raft and held on to the edge of the raft tightly with everything he had. But he slowly began drifting toward the engine, which was still running. Seeing the danger behind him, he immediately shut his eyes. Just then, the engine caught fire, and the blast wave launched him up and threw him back into the ocean. The entire plane slowly sank into the ocean with one powerful explosion. But the danger was not over yet. Chuck not only had to face the fierce storm and gale in the ocean, but also had to endure massive waves rising one after another. He simply held on tightly to the rope of the life raft. In this way, no one knows how much time passed, and suddenly the air went out of the life raft. Sharp rocks had torn it apart. This meant that he had finally reached the shore. He gathered his last remaining strength and dragged the life raft all the way to the shore. The next morning, when sunlight fell on his face, he realized that he was alive and had drifted onto a small island. But even after escaping from the jaws of death, he got no relief because he did not know what dangerous things he would have to face in this unknown place. As he walked, he kept picking up items scattered from the plane and began searching inside the island for people like himself. But when he looked around in all directions, only a never-ending silence greeted him. This made it clear that he was stranded on an island that did not even exist on the map of the world. Is anyone here? So that he would not die trapped here, he began thinking of various ways to save himself. But at this moment, he had no effective option other than writing a help sign on the beach. Night darkness fell quickly, and he was still hoping that some passing boat would notice him. But as the night went on, his hopes also slowly turned into fear because of the silence all around. He kept trembling with fear, listening to the sounds of extremely dangerous creatures in the jungle. The next day, he used the items he had gathered to build a makeshift resting place and began checking through the items recovered from the plane. Now, apart from the pocket watch given to him by his girlfriend, nothing else useful remained with him. Thinking about the moments spent with his girlfriend, he felt even more regret about getting on that plane. Actually, before Kelly left on her business trip, she had given Chuck a pocket watch so that when she returned at Christmas, the two of them could get married. But a sudden plane crash had stopped this marriage right here. When all his family members had accepted that Chuck had died in the accident, he still stubbornly stayed alive. But on this deserted island, finding food and water had become a very big problem, and no one knew how long Chuck would be able to hold on. He gathered many of his company's parcels back together, but he decided not to open them, because for him, this was the honesty of his work. Even if he was stranded on an unknown island, he still did not want to break the trust of his customers. The help signs he had made on the beach the previous day had long been washed away by the ocean waves. He had to use some damaged pieces of wood to write help again. Slowly, the desire to stay alive inside Chuck kept growing stronger and stronger. He knew that if he wanted to get out of here, he would have to stay alive no matter what. But on this deserted little island, he found nothing edible except hard coconuts. And because he had no tool to open the coconuts, opening a coconut had also become an extremely difficult task for him. Then he finally cracked a coconut open with a sharp stone and began tasting its water, which at that moment was like nectar for him. But he was not satisfied with just coconuts. Chuck decided to explore other parts of this small island to fill his stomach. He wanted to climb to the highest just peek here and see everything. But sharp rocky mountain stones made his path difficult, so he cut a piece of fabric from his pants with a stone, mixed in some leaves, and made himself a pair of shoes. But when he reached the top of the mountain, he found out that this truly was a deserted island. There was ocean stretching far and wide in all directions, but no other human being was visible anywhere. As he was thinking in disappointment about how he could possibly save his life, suddenly a strange thing caught his attention from afar. Without thinking, he ran toward that thing. He had thought it was some pilot who had also survived just like him, but when Chuck turned that pilot over and looked, he found that the pilot had died quite a long time ago. With a heavy heart, he dragged the pilot's body onto the island and began collecting some useful items from him. He kept for himself a pair of shoes that were still wearable, a torch that could still light up, and a wallet that had become useless. After this, he dug a grave for the pilot, buried his body in it, and carved the date of his death on a rock. In the evening, Chuck sat on the beach looking at his shoes. There was a strange sadness in his mind. He felt that perhaps the next one lying in that grave would be himself. For this reason, Chuck could not sleep that night. He had come to understand that if he kept sitting with his hands folded like this, his death was certain. So the next day, he learned the art of surviving in the jungle. He collected the dew gathered on tree leaves and stored it in a coconut shell because he needed clean water to drink. He sharpened a wooden stick to make a spear for catching fish. Even though all of this was quite foolish, this constant effort kept him from feeling hopeless. That very night, while using the toilet, he spotted a light in the distance. He shouted loudly so that he could catch the attention of that boat. He felt as though he would no longer have to stay here. He used the torch to signal so that someone would notice him. But because the distance was too great, this faint light was of no use. As that light slowly disappeared from his sight, his heart filled with anger and helplessness. So the very next morning, as soon as the sun rose, he impatiently set off with the torn raft in the direction of that ship, because this was the only chance of escape he had found after weeks of effort. He was absolutely not willing to let it slip away. Although he wanted to somehow cross the ocean, he kept failing against the force of the waves again and again. He showed courage countless times, but each time the ocean waves pushed him back. But still, he was not ready to give up. He tried very hard, but in the end, the ocean waves swallowed him. Once inside the water, his thigh suddenly struck a sharp underwater rock, and a sharp pain drenched Chuck's thigh in blood. At this point, he had no strength left to go any further. He simply dragged the broken raft and returned to the shore in terrible condition. In the evening, suddenly a fierce gale and heavy rain began in the sky. This made the troubles of the already injured Chuck even worse. With the help of the raft, he could only cover the company's goods. Then he began looking for another place to shelter from the rain with his bleeding leg. Just then, he found a small cave, and to keep himself conscious, he drank a few sips of dirty rainwater. Having become almost completely exhausted, his injured body could no longer endure it, and he collapsed unconscious on the ground. The battery of the torch kept behind him ran out, and it too was swallowed by darkness. The next day, Chuck woke up again in sharp pain. Signs of maggots infecting the wound on his leg were becoming visible. In this isolated place, if this was not treated, he would have to face an even greater danger. To find even the smallest hope of staying alive, he had to let go of his stubbornness, and he made the decision to open those parcels. In the packages, he found a dozen videotapes, a volleyball decorated like a gift, a beautiful long woman's dress, and a pair of skates that looked the most stylish. But he decided not to open the last parcel. Perhaps because he did not want to feel disappointed, or perhaps because he wanted to keep one hope alive for himself. He applied the foam used in the parcel's packaging to his wound. Then he unlaced the shoes and used the laces to tie a makeshift bandage. The blades from the skates became the most useful tools he had, and from the black mesh of the long dress, he made an easy fish-catching net. With the help of the fishing tool, after many days he was finally able to eat a full meal for the first time. So that swallowing raw food would not be difficult, Chuck decided to start a fire by rubbing pieces of wood. But even though he tried continuously from morning until evening, and then from evening until the next morning, the small spark inside him could still not become the fire he hoped for. When both his hands were scraped raw from rubbing and fresh blood began flowing from them, Chuck's anger burst out. The difficult life on the island and his old injuries had completely broken him. Chuck sat by the shore and cleaned his wounds with water, and sharp pain reminded him once again of his suffering. Now staying alive was a question he could not run away from. The volleyball he had just thrown away in anger was lying near his feet, and the fresh red print of his palm on it looked very bright. Just then, a strange thought came to his mind. He used his saliva to draw two eyes on the palm print and a slight smile above it. Now the volleyball looked like a human face. Perhaps due to living alone for too long, he decided that he would make this face his friend. He named the volleyball Wilson and kept it with him so that it could be his companion in his life. This scene was a little strange for sure, but at least he did not feel alone. Under Wilson's watch, Chuck somehow felt all his strength return. As he kept rubbing the wood faster and faster, a spark truly emerged between the pieces of wood. Seeing the burning fire, Chuck became very happy, as though he had won a great battle. Along with being a good scheme for cooking food, this fire was also a good arrangement for sending a signal of his presence here. At night while eating, he talked to Wilson about his situation. According to his calculations, he had now traveled more than approximately 4,000 miles away. That meant if he wanted someone to find him, the possibility of being found was almost impossible. But now Chuck had no other way. He simply kept strengthening himself and trying to stay alive. From eating raw food and filth, his already bad teeth swelled up and became infected. Finally, due to unbearable pain, he resolved that he would remove his tooth himself. He held the skate blade against the tooth with one hand and picked up a rock with the other hand. He thought that one moment of pain is better than prolonged pain. Then he struck hard. Even after becoming an expert at surviving in the jungle, the shine that was once in his eyes was gone. Within 4 years, Chuck had turned into a wild man. Although being skilled at catching fish meant he had no shortage of meat, the will to live that he once had in his eyes had disappeared. Now he kept no hope of escaping, and every day of staying alive was simply one more day of his loneliness. But sometime later, he found a piece of tin at the edge of a rock and brought it to the beach. But just as the sea breeze knocked that piece of tin down, suddenly an idea struck his mind. If he could use this to cut through the ocean waves, then perhaps he truly had a chance of getting out of this place. As soon as this idea came to him, he did not wait a single moment more. He needed to get off this deserted island as quickly as possible. Chuck immediately swung into action. First, he needed to build a boat. He collected a large number of branches and placed them together. Then he used wild ropes and tied everything together. He even turned useless videotape into rope. By now, Chuck's mental state was beginning to deteriorate. He started feeling that Wilson was watching him and did not want to let him go. For this reason, that night he got into a fight with Wilson. "I cannot talk to you my entire life. Did you hear me, you worthless volleyball?" Then in anger, he kicked his 4-year-old friend and threw him far away. But when he calmed down after a while, he felt deep remorse for his friend Wilson. So he went out in the darkness of the night to find Wilson and lovingly repainted his face. Every day passed in this same way, and Chuck's wooden boat was finally completed. He had prepared all his things to leave. Now he only needed to wait for the wind to blow in the right direction so that he could launch his boat into the ocean. He had also left a sign of his being stranded there. He had set a world record by being stuck on this merciless island for more than 10,500 days. Just as he was carving the last letter, suddenly the wind began blowing in the direction Chuck wanted. He excitedly pushed the boat toward the ocean and then set off to find life along with his old friend Wilson. The ocean waves were still the same, but they could not stop him from returning home. Like the waves of a lake, almost every single wave of the ocean nearly drowned him, but he kept cutting through the waves with his efforts. Every time he escaped from the jaws of death, the joy of getting out grew even stronger inside him. When Chuck turned around and looked at that small island that had kept him imprisoned for 4 years, in that moment there was a strange feeling in Chuck's heart. If he had not been stubborn about facing this hardship, then perhaps even today he would still be living a life filled with loneliness. Although his battle had only just begun, he did not know that the dangers waiting for him ahead would prove to be the most deadly challenge for him. Right at the moment when he felt that he would drift along and reach a human settlement, yet another fierce storm shook him violently. That night in the heavy rain, it was impossible to open his eyes. He lay helpless on the boat, holding on tightly, enduring the attacks of the waves. This was the most difficult night for him. He was helpless and had surrendered everything to God. The good thing was that Chuck was lucky. Even that night's fierce storm could not take him away, but his boat had suffered heavy damage. And most importantly, his old friend had also gotten separated from the boat because the rope had come loose. By the time he realized this, Wilson had already drifted very far away with the ocean waves. He was his only companion, the one he would share his heart's thoughts with. Even though he was just a volleyball, he was his one and only support. He forgot everything and jumped into the ocean, trying to save him. But the distance was too great, and the deep ocean kept frightening him again and again. On one side was the boat that saved his life, and on the other side was Wilson, his 4-year companion. But now he had no other choice. He simply watched his old friend drifting farther and farther away before his very eyes. "Wilson, please forgive me." In this way, he lost his only friend, and once again, loneliness and helplessness surrounded him completely. completely. Looking at his nearly completely broken wooden boat and gazing at the ocean spread out in all directions, in this moment Chuck understood very clearly that he would now never be able to return to his home. Because of this, the will to live that had just awakened inside him broke completely. Finally, he threw away the boat's paddle too and decided that he would now simply wait quietly for the ocean to swallow him as quickly as possible. Right at that moment when Chuck had prepared himself to face death, suddenly a horn sound echoed that he had only heard in his dreams. Having lost all hope, he gathered his last remaining strength, turned around and saw that a massive cargo ship was sailing right in front of him. Just then, everyone on the ship also spotted Chuck, and in this way, after years of hardship, Chuck finally boarded a plane again and returned home. The story of his safe and alive return made him famous throughout the entire city. But Chuck did not care about any of these things. He just wanted to meet his girlfriend, whom he had not seen for 4 years. But when a man opened the door and came forward instead of his girlfriend, he was left stunned. That man said to Chuck, "I am Kelly's husband." Jerry loved it. Then he came to know that the one he had been missing all along was now married and had become the mother of a child. Kelly's husband was calming Chuck down and defending his wife. "Maybe you should give her a little more time." Saying this, he left from there. Seeing Kelly cry, Chuck understood her situation. He understood that it was not her fault. Chuck would perhaps have done the same. That night, the company hosted a feast of seafood in celebration. Seeing the delicious fish and large crabs placed on the table, Chuck felt something strange in that moment. In his mind were the memories of that island, because the crabs and fish that seemed boring on the island had become delicious food here. The next day, Chuck delivered the parcel to its destination that he had not opened on the island and also gave a thank you letter. He expressed gratitude that it was this very package that had saved his life. What was in that strange parcel that remained his companion for such a long time? He never opened it to find out. And in this way, the ending of this wonderful story came. So now you tell me, how did you like this video? If you liked the video, then go to my channel and definitely check out the other videos too. And tell me in the comments which movie's explanation you want to see next.